Hey everyone, Jared Gatsby, your local real estate superhero, here again. Today we are going to be going over another term that I think may confuse some people whenever they haven't heard it before, and that's the term easements. And so we're going to be going over what exactly is an easement, how you go about finding out whether a property has it, and what it means for you as someone who's buying a home or selling a home around your neighbors. So what is an easement? An easement, by its legal definition, is a non-possessory right to use another person's real property or enter onto another person's real property. So what does that mean? I mean, that's its legal definition in a nutshell. Essentially, what an easement is a legal right to be able to step foot onto someone's land. Notice that it says onto in the legal definition, not into, whenever it says real property. It's essentially saying that someone has the ability to walk through your yard, use your driveway, some sense of the land that your home is on. They have a legal right to be able to step foot onto it. Now, the question becomes, why? Why is, my neighbor legally allowed to step onto or use my driveway or step onto or enter my backyard? It's essentially in a situation where you have two parties. You have the dominant tenement and you have the servient tenement. The dominant tenement is the person who does not own the property but is allowed to enter onto it, and the servient tenement is the person who owns the land but obviously isn't the one using it for whatever purpose that causes it to become an easement. So what purpose causes it to become an easement? Really simply put, it's the inability to do something without using that land. What I mean when I say that is better explained with an example than with a phrase, and it's basically, look at it as if you have someone who lives in the home directly behind you, and the only way that they can get from the front of their house to the main road in order to leave for work or get out of their home or anything along those lines is to use your driveway. Then that gives them what's called an easement. It's a legal need to be able to use someone else's land that they don't own. So it's not to say that they can do whatever they want with the land. It's not to say that they can, vandalize or take part in changing any aspects of that land. It's just to say that they have a legal right to be able to use it in order to be able to do what is essentially deemed necessary for the home to be livable. So whenever you hear that, it's actually very easy to kind of understand the need for an easement. That's the basic example of what causes it. A secondary example of what causes an easement may be a city usage situation where maybe you have a power pole in your backyard that's used for setting up cable or telephone connections, things like that. Then the city has an easement that allows them to have access to your backyard in order to do things like set up, disconnect, reconnect, fix, anything relevant to, like we said, internet connections, cable connections, telephone connections, something of those sorts. So it does ask the question of, well, okay, if this is someone else's right to use my property, who's supposed to be taking care of my property? Usually the land that's being used is in good shape, but let's say that it falls out of shape and someone needs to be able to take care of it. Who's responsible for doing this? Simply put, like I said, you have two parties involved with this, the dominant and the servient tenement. Servient is the person who owns the land. Dominant is the one who is basically getting granted access to this. The dominant needs to, in most states, take care of the easement because they're the ones benefiting from it. It's their responsibility to, at the very least, maintain it in most states. It depends a little bit on where you're living and what you're dealing with. But in a grand scheme of things, the person who's being granted this privilege needs to be responsible for maintaining the ability to use that privilege. And so the question also is asked, how do I know whether or not there's an easement on my property? That's a lot easier to deal with. Basically, you have someone pull what's called a preliminary title report, which basically shows all the details of the title of the home. You have a title rep do this, or you have an agent get a hold of a title rep in order to do this for you whenever you want to sell your home, as well as have someone read it whenever they're wanting to buy a home. This will tell you what kind of easements you have. A lot of times people will have city easements that allow, granted access to things like the backyard in a situation that needs it, but periodically you have something where there is someone who does not have access to something that makes the home livable that is only accessible if they're capable of using some aspect of your yard. That's where an easement is granted, and it is easily found in the preliminary title report. So have someone check that for you whenever you're wanting to buy a home, so you know if the home you're buying has one. And if you're wondering whether or not Steve down the, right behind you is allowed to use your yard in order to get to the, street in front of you, then that's something you'd want to check in your preliminary title report as well. But that's easements in a nutshell. If you guys have any questions, if you want me to divulge a little bit more into detail on what these may be, let me know down in the comments below. Please like and subscribe this video because YouTube gets a really big kick out of stuff like this. But hopefully, if you keep hearing the term easements being thrown around or dominant and servient tenement thrown around, you now have a better idea on what people are talking about when they're talking about it. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye.